If you want to know which cryptocurrencies or altcoins to invest in for long-term, medium-term, or short-term, or to trade in, then take a look at Tokenmetrics. Tokenmetrics uses artificial intelligence-based crypto indices, rankings, and price predictions to give you the best possible altcoins and cryptocurrencies to hodl or trade with. Use my affiliate code for a massive 10% off and 3 months free on the yearly plan. Link in the description below. Okay. Now, you mentioned time. Now, here's how I understand it, and I'm not someone who's new to crypto. So if I hold the tokens in my wallet, in my Ether wallet, I get rewarded time, which is another token, depending upon the length that I hold the original Dragon tokens for. A little bit like, I think, Skycoin and coin hours. If I hold Skycoin in my wallet, the longer I hold it, I earn coin hours. Is that
it's a little bit like that, right? It's okay. So there is, and I'll tell you what led to it. We in 2017, I brought up to the team, have you guys ever heard of Bitcoin days destroyed? So have you ever heard of that?
No.
Okay, so it was something that early days in Bitcoin, people would bandy about, people would talk about it, people would watch it and there are a couple of sites that still show it. The intent was to, is Satoshi still with us? Is Satoshi going to ever move those massive amounts of coins that were mined in the early days? And basically, it's a measure of, if I move a Bitcoin, it is a measure of how long that balance was in that address in days, right? And it was, an interesting figure, mostly to see, how old coins are moving versus new coins. Very interesting thing that, if I was an economist, this is an amazing thing. You can't imagine the type of data you could get in crypto that you can't get in the traditional economy, right? So anyway, I took that concept, and nobody really talks about it much anymore. I don't know why, but I took that concept and said, okay, let's do the flip side and say we're going to score how long you hold it instead of how much is lost when you move it. I mean, you can get the same thing either way, but we called it originally Dragon Days of Slumber Score, right? It was, your dragons were sleeping, right? And the intent was multiple. It was, again, part of it was very focused on the new crypto people that were involved, that we basically gave them something to watch, which was usable and was immediately generated. And by the way, it's not tokenized. It's an odd thing that, because the behavioral pattern is that we don't want people to just sell it directly, right? And it doesn't move with the dragons, because then there'll be no scarcity at all, right? That when you move dragons, that time is destroyed for however long those dragons have been in that wallet. And what we used it for initially, the very first use case was our beta programs. So people who were running the new nodes, people who were coming in to test out various parts of the system, that without having to have a beta registration, all we had to do was say anyone over 20 million time can access the system. And the beauty is they could prove that they had over 20 million time, and we on our side could actually even meter how many people we wanted. Let's say it's a very early beta, we only want to have a couple hundred users. We can drill it down and say we'll say 20. If we had 20% engagement, that will open it up to the top 1,000 time holders, and we probably get about 200, right? But it was a very easy way to pull it down, and then over time we would lower that time requirement. And we did that for running various nodes, and it was an immediate utility. It was a very amazing thing, because the other side of it was, and I think we could say that we were very successful with this, that especially in the early days, and especially when every exchange was getting hacked and people were losing crypto all the time, that we didn't really want that to happen to our community, right? So we preached constantly, not your keys, not your coins, put them on a hardware wallet. We sold hardware wallets, we gave away hardware wallets. In fact, before a lot of the hardware wallet stuff was really accessible, because back, if you remember, in 2017, 2018, it was hard to get a Ledger or a Trezor. I mean, it was like they'd be sold out, they'd be selling for 2 or 3x normal price on Amazon. It was crazy. And so we made a way that people could move their time. But there was a very clear mechanism that was a little restrictive on purpose. But what it did is it kept people, because if I'm not holding my dragons in my under keys that I own, someone else owns that time. That I have to have the keys to prove the time. So if I have them on exchange, they're worthless. And that kept a lot of people off the exchanges. Even if you look at the biggest dragon associated, or I say the biggest attack on an exchange that had a large set of dragons was this recent KuCoin attack, right? And I think there were 26 million dragons on the exchange. I have no idea how many, but I have to assume that there were very few that were actual dragon holders. I think most of that is fees and or whatever their bots have produced. I don't know that, right? I mean, I don't have any line in with KuCoin, and everyone we've interacted with there has been great, by the way. I mean, they came to us right away and they asked for help, and we did everything we could. We locked down the addresses that were where they were stolen and everything else. And we tried to do whatever we can, but I think we only had a couple people ever that, maybe someone after this will tell me, it's like, no, I lost, whatever. But there weren't very many people I know, and the balances were pretty low that I saw, and no one was really upset, right? They were all mostly, I should have had them on the exchange, right?
That makes sense. And then this time, is that something that can be traded? Do people trade it?
It's really funny. There are a couple of things we could go into on that. There was a system for a while that shut down because they were worried about regulatory that allowed people to trade it. It was basically an interface to a smart contract that was built independently. There were 3 or 4 Dragonchain community members that built the system independently, and it was brilliant. I mean, it was just amazing what they did and how they did it. But it basically allowed people to escrow a transfer of dragons and pay the proper fees to move the time, right? So it was a very like I said, trustless approach to moving the dragons with the time properly. It was brilliant. They shut it down because regulatory potential issues. They wanted to do the right thing, but whatever. It would have been nice if they could have kept it running, but so people can't generally trade time right now. If you send dragons, you lose time. There are a couple of things that we've thought about very recently that might make it possible, and in a way that would make sense economically, that there would still be a lot of scarcity, right? So we're working on a couple of ideas, but who knows? But about time, I mean, we've used it for a number of different things. Like we said, access for beta. We've have a couple of other things that have been built in the past of just access to certain services. But and loyalty is a big one. And it's kind of obvious that theoretically I could move my loyalty from one sandwich shop to another, or from one airline to another, because I can prove, look, I'm a loyal airline traveler. I travel every once a month, something like this. I could theoretically take that as a user, and because some airline has completely changed their policies, that now the loyalty isn't just my loyalty to them; it's their loyalty to me, right? So it's a beautiful flip on its head possibility. And we've worked a few of those, and there are a few people using that, and there are a few that are working on systems that will be using those capabilities. But in the end, the biggest, at least in my opinion, the biggest and most important use of time, although probably the most abstract, is for network scarcity. And it's an interesting thing because
Joe, hold on. More abstract than what we've already covered. Just to be clear, okay.
Well, but you can kind of narrow it down, and depending upon how you look at it, it's simple. It is literally, if you understand that if I hold one dragon for one day in a certain address that I have one time, if I hold 1 million dragons for one day, that's 1 million times, right? So you can affect it by the number, by the magnitude, but you can't affect the time, right? So if I need to get 30 million time by the end of the month, I'm going to have to put more dragons in to do it, right? So it's a known thing. So the economy is sound, and that's for businesses or for verification runners, right? So because we have a hybrid approach. And because our deployment, I mean, on the technical side, for anybody who wants to know, is all Kubernetes and Docker based, Linux, simple commodity systems, things that pretty much every major system in the world uses. Most developers and DevOps people know how to use. But that means you can deploy it to cloud. You can deploy it on-prem. These nodes can be scalable. These nodes don't have the proof of work component unless you want it in there by default. So how do you maintain an economy? How do you make it reasonable for nodes to compete so that they can profitably do verification in a way that is a sound economy, so that when a business comes in, they don't have to build their own entire network themselves, right? So you have to have some unit of value, which is the Dragon, which is a tokenized micro license. So when I, as a business, pay a certain amount for a block of transactions, that block moves up and gets verification. The issue was that if the nodes said, I'm only going to take the top paid fee transactions, and I'm going to verify those and ignore the rest. And that's how most blockchain networks work. That you'll have a whole bundle of blocks, and they can decide, I'm going to grab them all, or I'm going to just grab some for
which
how much
gives rise to exorbitant gas fees.
Right. And so, if you want to get into block, you have to boost how much you're paying, right? And the problem is, most of the systems that we were selling, building, and the people were building weren't a user going in and making a payment. So it's a single transaction, and I can decide, looks like the transaction fee is high. I'll pay $4 today. Okay, it's important. I'll do it, or I'll wait, right? That this is something that these are my users coming to my website, my users coming to my mobile app and doing things. So I'm needing to send these transactions out as they happen. I can't, go through and it's like, what am I comfortable paying? So you have to think about it. Not only could, if we're running on a typical network, not only could I have a situation where something else on the network, totally dissociated from my business, has gotten all of a sudden a couple of million transactions a day, or orders of magnitude more traffic than we saw yesterday. That my first effect, then the one that most people talk about, is the fees go up, and all of a sudden, on Ethereum, I'm paying $80 fees and stuff like this. It's not fun. But worse, as a business, I can't get into the blocks. I can't even get my transactions in a block, right? Even if I were to pay $20,000, that's happened before. So what we've done instead is flipped it on its head. Instead of a piece of hardware as the scarcity, and you think about it, on Ethereum, when CryptoKitties comes out, there's a ton more traffic. So people have to add more hardware to handle it, which is profitable. There's a reason to do it, but it takes time. You have to get the hardware. You have to put it in place. You have to power it up. You have to get it connected, configured, and you have to decide, how long will this traffic last? Is this just is it going to run for a few weeks and then be dead, and I'm going to have this hardware that isn't profitable then? So it's this weird thing that delays the network from actually being able to take on that new traffic, which is good traffic. So what we did is we flipped it on its head and said, time is the scarcity. It's no longer the hardware. So now you can deploy to cloud, and if your node needs to scale up to millions of transactions, it can. Which, the funny thing is, our first take at that was, and it's easiest to understand if I explain how we went through the process to get to where we are. Our first take on it was that, I'm going to set how much I'm willing to pay as a business, and the nodes up here are going to set how much they're willing to accept to do the verification, but still have the time. And so it still was, there were areas where it didn't work, where either the payouts weren't equitable, or it wasn't efficient, right? Because some transactions might go unverified. So instead, we flipped it on its head. Time is a scarcity, and we say that of all the nodes that participate, and I described the consensus workflow that my block as a business goes up to a level 2, level 3, level 4, and a level 5 node, and onto Bitcoin and Ethereum. That everyone in that set, and it's a chain itself, by the way, that those are signed as another chain. So every block that is, as in typical fashion, has a hash of it of the prior block. Mm-hmm. It also will have a hash of the lower level in the verification chain. So it looks like this interesting line where you have a a blockchain this way, but every single block has another chain vertically that goes up to get more verification. Um, and because we're doing that, all of those nodes that are verifying are sharing the fee for that block, and they're sharing it based upon their proportional staking of time. So if I have 1 billion time and I get into one of these blocks, I'm typically going to get a big chunk of whatever the fees are. Now, the other side of it is, the balanced side of the economy is that the fees are set by the business based upon the time that they've staked. So they're competing against the verification nodes for time. The verification nodes are competing against each other for time. And what it means is that we can do many orders of magnitude increase in traffic. And because both of the physical structure of the architecture and because of that economy, that number one, you don't see the network congestion because, first of all, those nodes can scale up like crazy. Most of them are cloud-based, not all of them. They're deployed to multiple clouds, multiple sites. When we're in a lot of people running them on-prem. So the network doesn't fall down. If even the network fell down, let's say that you were on a cruise ship that normally had some type of comms that you no longer do, your node is still functioning. As long as it's local, as long as you can access your node, it will still function. And it'll catch up later when it does get network. But the network isn't congested because of scalability and because they're all independent blockchains. And one of the most important parts is that your fees, your price as a business for an individual transaction does not change. So we did a demo, and we call it a demo, but it was an operational demo in January of this year. I can't remember the date, where we wanted to demonstrate 24 hours of continuous traffic at greater than Visa World Network volume, right? The payment network. So we basically put this out and did a 24-hour live stream on YouTube, which that wasn't fun, right? We stayed up for 24 hours, but we ran at about 130 to 150% of the average volume of Visa payment network for that 24 hours. We did over 250 million transactions in that 24 hours, and they were all real. They were full. Here's a person. It was real data. It was generated data, but it was. You know what I'm talking about. It wasn't just that we're sending a single byte or something like that. It was sending something that would be reasonable, and every single one of those transactions was secured, was proven all the way to Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic and Binance, and so and during that time, that was a 6 orders of magnitude increase for our network for that one day, and I think our total cost, because we ran the nodes, our total cost was around 15 grand. It's cheaper now. We've actually added some ability to do even cheaper transactions, because at the time, I think it was 1/100 of a cent was the cheapest transaction that you could push. And now it's 25 10 millionths of a cent, I think.
Wow.
Or maybe 25 10 millionths of a dollar. That's what it is. It's zeros. And that gets you, for every one of those transactions, security all the way to Bitcoin and Ethereum in a scalable way. And nobody on the system saw any congestion of the network itself, especially of their nodes, and no transaction on the system had a price effect. Every other business node that was running paid the same price during that day that they did before, right? And everything else was still running. It was on the same network. It was a very interesting demo that it is pretty powerful. So it's pretty cool.
Yes, very cool. Okay, so look, what have you? I've got a couple of more questions for you. Like, what have you got coming up? What are you developing? And then why have you joined the BPSAA?
Okay, all right. So on what we're developing, I mentioned the decentralized identity system. We just spun that off a couple months ago so that we could work with another entity to get some of the higher level verifications, identity verifications in place, like banking, regulation level, enterprise level, KYC, public record search, things like that. So that we're building that out. It's actually being built into 3 systems right now. And we have a couple more coming as soon as we get a few more features built out. And that's called MiFi, and Factor. So Factor's the open part, and MiFi is the enterprise part. We have something that is it's called Eternal, that we're looking to basically expand upon. And this isn't announced, but it's not unknown, some of what we're doing. But we're going to be doing some really interesting stuff there, and it's mostly an archival system. I mean, you can go and save a Trump tweet, right? And if it gets deleted, then you have it, and we can prove it all the way to Bitcoin. This is exactly what was said. This is exactly when it was said. This came from Twitter. All those things. And we had a bot for a while, but Twitter banned it and never gave us any feedback why. Right. So anyway, it was really funny. And we're getting an app. We're putting an app out on that. I mean, I'm using it right now. It's in beta. We're going to get that app out. It makes it easier to use. But it's for anything. You could put any document on there. You could put any text on there. You could use it for an announcement system. It was primarily made as a demo when we first got our interchain patent, right? So brilliant thing there, but simple. We have some stuff I can't say here, but that very exciting.
Go on.
Really exciting stuff about that and how to monetize it, right? So cool stuff there. Really good team. Probably the biggest thing that we have rolling out right now is called Den. So it's at den.social, and it is basically a social network, community forum platform that has it's both crypto aware and based on crypto. Every action is on chain. Every vote, every reply, every post, and obviously that's cool. But the most interesting part of it is that it is modeled for human behavior. It is modeled in a way that is intended to push people to provide the best content, to put the most work into building good content, because they're rewarded on it. But the interesting part about it isn't that it's just based on number of upvotes, and I can hook a bot up and I can play the algorithm. That we use two mechanisms, unique vote versus energy, and I won't get into some of the mechanisms for how it works. I mean, it's pretty normal for a normal user, with a couple little interesting points to it, that you can vote more than one energy on reply or a post, right? To say, oh, I'd really like this. The reason that exists is because we get consensus based upon unique voters. So we know it's not, it's harder to set up bots. We know that these are unique voters in the system. And the quality of the content is gauged on how unique the vote is and on how much energy was applied. But the beauty is that whether they know it or not, there is a marketplace around the evaluation of that content. That is, the earlier you can come in and signal to the system that this is good content or this is bad content within that community, not as a whole, because some content doesn't make sense across communities. So it's very much community focused and segregated, that if you can come in, whether you agree with it or not, you could be a socialist and go into the capitalist layer and where all those users are, and they're going to love this content. That the earlier you signal that to the system, and the more consensus is reached upon that, the more you will profit as an evaluator, right? Wow. So it's a way.
When is that coming out?
It's already out. It is in beta, but the tokens have already been launched. Yeah, probably I can make it simple that so we have a user, obviously a user, the content creator role. That's the biggest benefit. The second is the evaluator role. Really good benefit there. The third is the basically the person who builds the communities, who starts them out, seeds them, gets content running, gets people involved. That's an owner role, and we actually have NFT-based ownership of all of the communities, and that the owners are incentivized because the more activity flows through that community, the more matter they generate based upon the NFTs. So
this is in beta, right? I'm gonna have all the links, Discord and Telegram and everything. People go and find out more, right? Now you've recently joined you applied to join BPSAA.
Yes.
In a nutshell, why?
It was great. They reached out, and we started talking to them. Like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then the more I learned about it, the more I was like, why did I not know about this? I knows the grindstone, I guess, but the fact that the philosophy around it, where all the projects help each other both, in spreading the message. Oh, here's something new, but also in the legitimate and the real uh, uh, possibility of partnering to use each other's tech, right? Where it's a very fundamental positive that nobody's in there because we're in this tribe and you guys all suck and these guys are all great. There's none of that. It's all about this is technology. It's a very friendly environment. Yeah, and it seems like it's everybody has the same philosophy. I mean, when I went in and talked to the whole group, I was like, oh, okay, this is really good because everybody had really amazing. It was probably one of the best technical interviews I'd been in, right? In terms of you how do you do this? Why do you do that? Right? There's a lot of really cool conversation in there. But it was very technology focused, which tends to be Dragonchain and Dragon community is very much about the tech, right?
Yeah.
There are speculators. There are Telegram groups where they do nothing but rail on us for the bear market. But what do you do?
You survived that, so kudos to you, right? And while BPSAA, on the one hand, is about the tech, for me as someone who's not techie, what I'm really clear about with projects like Komodo and Ether1 and Sentinel and Pirate Chain and Ergo and yourselves and Burstcoin, they're actually providing or building technology that people can use that's going to further privacy, security, and the adoption of blockchain, and using blockchain to further privacy.
Yes.
Now, there's one other question I want to ask you, which is tangentially related to Dragonchain. So I looked at your Twitter feed. You've got all these tweets that are supportive of Julian Assange.
Oh, yes, of course.
No, wait a minute. You are a tech company. Why are you dabbling in the political sphere?
I get that a lot.
By the way, I agree with you.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, it's funny because people don't remember. Most people weren't there. Early on in Bitcoin, it felt like a hyperactive version of most of the open source projects. I mean, open source projects, you get tribalism, you get fights. Sometimes it's a rough world, right? But it's because everything's freaking out there. It's all in the open. The code is the result. There's nothing but the code. So it doesn't matter what your political opinion is, anything like that. That Linux, and if you've ever met like Richard Stallman or anything like that, there's some very big philosophical undertones for that whole world, right? That was very much mirrored with early Bitcoin and early crypto, but I think magnified because the potential was enormous. And it was obvious that the potential was enormous, probably to a level that none of us could really consider to plan ahead based upon it. But it's very much that there's a liberty philosophical angle.
Yeah, I can hear something in what you're saying. Like what Julian Assange represents is analogous to the promise of the blockchain.
Yes.
Open source, information, transparency, and accountability.
Right. All right. And it's mapped. And the issue is it became so obviously disruptive that the banks got involved. Bitcoin's culture changed radically. And if it was in 15, 16, around that time, everything changed with the big block, small block debates and everything else. Censorship started happening. Big entities started to acquire some of the players in the space, and it became kind of scary. And so when you map that over to public life, you map it over to politics. I see everything as liberty is the reason we're here. Whether that's liberty for your business, that's liberty for your person, that's liberty for transparency with government action, things like that. That's what this technology is at its basis, and that's what the purpose was for it being created in the first place. And you can't lose that. So you have to have some angle that we have to try to use this anywhere we can, this technology in any way we can to improve the world that way. And typically you can find ways to monetize it, but even if you can't, there are ways to pay for it. And that's all about freedom of speech. It's all about anti-censorship capabilities. It's all about the ability to hold your own identity so that no one has you under their thumb, right?
Yeah.
and Assange is a huge part of that. We also have something on, dang, I'm blanking on the name. DPR, Dread Pirate Roberts, right?
Mm.
We have a video on that. It's a commercial, and in fact, it was supposed to air on broadcast TV in the U.S. And they wouldn't let it air. They wouldn't even let our JFK one air. We had a JFK one. It was going to roll out with, and you can look it up. It's on YouTube. They're freaking amazing ads, right? There's JFK speech. There's Assange, and there's a Q one. So
I should check those out, and I'll link to those in the description below. Right.
Yes.
And what I want to do is I want to thank you very, very much for this, for taking the time out to explain this. I can't say that I've understood this, because that would be a lie, right? I'm still trying to get my head around it, right? Now, for anybody who's watching, if you have any comments or questions, put them in the description below. One thing I can say, and I'll say it again, is about your resilience, and that you are providing something that makes a difference with non-blockchain, with legacy projects and companies, in terms of the safe pass and the security, keeping data secure, and people owning their data, which I think is critical and vital. And interoperability is great in blockchain. So I get all of that, right? So thank you very, very much. And I look forward to speaking to you again at some point. And for anybody who's watching, go check out this project. Go check out BPSAA. And between now and when I see you next, please keep filling your pockets with crypto profits. This is Crypto Rich and Crypto Joe signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you.